Hello. Happy Earth Day, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is the latest installment of the Living Leadership webinar series, which is brought to you with support from the Sylvan Laureate Foundation and the American Express Foundation. Today's webinar is called In This Together, How Shared Value Grows Greener Cities. Today, I'll be your facilitator. My name is Eric Lin, and I'm a program manager here at the International Youth Foundation. And our presenter today is Alejandro Zapata, who is the Executive Director of Portafolio Verde, which is an environmental consulting firm based out of Medellín, Colombia. Just to go over the agenda, Alejandro is going to give you a brief overview of who Portafolio Verde is, a short overview of the World Urban Forum that just currently happened, the concept of shared value and how we can work towards a collective consciousness about thinking green and thinking sustainability. We'll have a short interview, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. And then at the very end, there's a very short 2-question survey. Just please remember to fill that survey out. It shouldn't take too long. So without further ado, Alejandro.
Hello, Eric.
Hello.
Thank you for this invitation for the webinar at the Earth Day. We are very glad to be with you and with the audience. I want to say hello to the colleagues and happy Earth Day for all of you. So first, I would like to give you a general idea of Portafolio Verde. We are an organization which is dedicated to innovation for sustainable development. We are always designing solutions and strategies for sustainability and sustainable development of our Earth, and that's why we are here today, because we have too much to talk about our planet and our Earth. Next, please. Eric, can you help me with the next slide? Okay, thank you. So we are a private organization founded in Colombia in 2005. We research, design, develop, and implement solutions and strategies for sustainable development through innovative knowledge management. We were part of I am one of the fellows of YouthActionNet program in 2009. Next slide, please, Eric. And I would like you to have a general idea of what we do in Portafolio Verde. We have 4 main services. We do project management for private organizations, for public sector, and for NGOs working in social and environmental areas. We also have an environmental and social consulting branch. The 3rd service is sustainable marketing, and the 4th service is eco-design. Those services are certified under a quality system, under the 9001 system. And our work areas, I would like you to have a general idea of our work areas, and we work in climate change, environmental education, sustainable tourism, renewable energy, rural development, reforestation, bio-commerce or bio-trade, sustainability, and sustainable building. So our areas of work mainly are social and environmental issues and topics. Next, please, Eric. Okay, so our first topic today is the World Urban Forum. I would like you to have a general idea. This World Urban Forum is a non-legislative technical forum convened by the United Nations Human Settlements Program, which is the UN Habitat, and hosted in a different city every 2 years. The first one was in Kenya in 2002. Then it was in Barcelona. After that, it was hosted in Vancouver, Canada. Then in 2008 in China. In 2010 was in Brazil. The last version was in Nápoles, and this year, just last week, it was in Medellín, Colombia. We were expecting 10,000 participants from 160 different countries, but we had more than 20,000 participants this version, and the focus was urban equality in development, cities for life. So every 2 years, Medellín had the opportunity to host the World Urban Forum this year, and it's important to know the main objective of this important world event. And the main objective of this World Forum was to examine the most pressing issues facing the world today in the area of human settlements. One of the topics worrying the world today is the rapid urbanization. So we had an entire week with different rooms, conferences. We had the opportunity to have the Nobel Prize here, Mr. Stiglitz, the Economy Prize, 10 years ago. So this was a big platform for discussion where we had the opportunity to meet many people around urban equity in development, and we had the opportunity to talk about sustainable development and how cities are going to be greener in the future. This 7th version was very focused, as I said before, in cities for life. And I want to go inside the topics, and one of the conclusions of the forum was the opportunity of the cities to discuss and to talk about affordable housing, the issue of affordable housing. It was a central topic in the forum. Also, the topic of public space was widely discussed in this 7th version of the World Urban Forum. And it's not only about public space. We need public space for the people. And how are we going to do that? It's very important to promote public participation for challenges and solutions. We need people involved with public issues, with public space, and public participation is one of the tools that the governments are using to create new solutions and strategies for the sustainable development of the cities. One of the topics of the forum was also the post-2015 agenda, and there are many documents, and you can find them very easily in the web page of the World Urban Forum. If you Google it, you will find it very easily. But I want to share with you the main topics, the main subjects that were discussed in this post-2015 agenda room. The first one is about urban planning. As you know, we have many cities around the world without a right planification. So urban planning is in the center of the world agenda if we are talking about cities and if we are talking about urban equity in development. The second one is in strengthening resilience. If you don't know the term resilience, resilience is about how a person or how a city can recover from a problem or from something very difficult. If you are a person and you had a very difficult problem and you can't come back from that problem, that's the meaning of resilience. And for the cities, it's the same thing. If there is a catastrophe in a city, or there is a big problem, or social problems as Medellín used to have in the past because of many different subjects. So a city is a resilient city if it can come back again from a catastrophe or from a very difficult problem. So one of the topics which was discussed is how can recover a city after a big catastrophe. And we have to prepare that because one of the conclusions is that we are not well prepared to come back after a catastrophe. Also, slum conditions and housing. We have millions of slums around the world, and the professionals, the majors, we have many majors of cities here in this urban forum, and was widely discussed how are we going to work with those many slums around the world. There are many opportunities for social innovators. How are we going to create innovating models? How are we going to change the conditions of many people around the world living in slums? So I wanted to show you this conclusion, especially because there are many things we can do as social innovators around the world. Also, the topic of urban transportation was one of the topics that was very discussed. We have now in Medellín a transportation system, and we have to think in new ways of transportation, because I took a note of one of the conferences, and sustainable cities allow us to focus on people rather than just infrastructure. We need cities for life, not for cars. I like it, this phrase, because it's one of the main topics and one of the main conclusions of this forum. Is about that we have been designing the cities for cars. We have been planning the cities for infrastructure with the help of architects and other professionals in these areas of urban development. But many times we don't think about public spaces, about how the people are enjoying the cities, how the people are sharing the cities with their families, with their friends, with their colleagues, with organizations, all of them trying to have a better earth, that's, which is the day we are celebrating today. So we have to take note about that we need cities for people, not only for cars. For example, in Medellín, our actual mayor, today's mayor in Medellín, is working in 5 very specific areas because we want to work in a city for life. It's one of the main topics of our major today, and the first one is non-violence. If we want a city for life, first we have to work hardly in non-violence in any city of the world. The second one, as I told you before, is about participation. Participation is a very powerful mechanism to work in all those challenges we have in our cities. We have challenges in education, we have challenges in health, we have challenges in urban development, including housing and slums, and if we include participation as a mechanism, we will have better cities, and most of the people around the world are now in cities and in big cities. Transparency is also in the agenda of Medellín as a city for life. It's one of the topics of this plan of the government. Also innovation, and I wanted to tell you, maybe you didn't know that last year Medellín was the winner of the most innovative city in the world. We were competing with New York and Tel Aviv. And we are now working in a whole ecosystem for innovation. And one of the topics we have to work in is innovation for greener cities. We have now a place which is called Ruta N in Medellín. And from Ruta N we are designing solutions and strategies for the city and for our state, and how to become a greener city is one of the working topics in this new organization. And the other term that Medellin is working hard is resilience. We come from a past which was very hard, and now Medellin has developed the capacity of resilience. We came back from a difficult time, and now we are the most innovative city in the world. So that's possible, and I think this is the moment to tell you about one of the notes of Stiglitz in the World Forum. He was talking about that if we are only dedicated to survive, we won't have time for innovation and for research. And I like it a lot, that phrase, because it's very real. If we are social innovators, if we are working to have better cities, if we are working in social and environmental aspects, we need time to think, we need time to create, and we need time to research. Here, one of the conclusions of Stiglitz in the forum is that a better world is possible. It's maybe it's very easy to pronounce that phrase, but it's very deep because it's coming from a Nobel of economy, and he has studied a lot the world, its economy, and many models of innovations to have a sustainable world and a real sustainable development. It was very inspiring to listen Mr. Stiglitz here with 2,000 people from many places, from 160 countries. Next slide, please, Eric. I want to tell you a little bit about this experience we had in the forum. In Portafolio Verde, we are always looking how can be involved with these conferences, with the forums, and with different events that are happening in our city and in our country. And the World Urban Forum was not the exception. So we rented, in alliance with a university, we wanted to go out from the rooms of the Urban Forum, we wanted to go out from the conferences, and we blocked a morning to go around Medellin with experts in urban development, with experts in equity, with experts in how to internationalize a city, how to make a greener city. And in that bus that you are looking in the picture, we went with this group of experts to go around Medellin as a laboratory of change. It's very important not only to go to the rooms and to go to listen to the speakers in the theaters during the forum, but we wanted to go to the streets. We wanted to go to different spots of the city, to read the city, to have a reflection of what's happening around Medellin. And we had the opportunity to have a very important reflection of what's happening in transportation in our city, what's happening in innovation, what's happening in the new corridors for animals around the city. And there are many strategies that I could share with you, but it could take a lot of time. But what I want to show you with this strategy is that you as social innovators around the world, because I know we have fellows and colleagues connected from many cities and countries around the world. We have, as social innovators, a responsibility to connect our organizations with these world-class events. So imagine we, with the opportunity of hosting this World Urban Forum in Medellin, and we had the opportunity to go with a group of national and international experts to read the city, to have a deep reflection of what's happening in a very innovative city. So I invite you also to think, how can you be involved with new strategies and innovative solutions to be involved with this kind of events happening in your cities, in your countries. And there is always a way to go out of the room and to develop different ways to study the topics and the subjects of one of these events like the World Urban Forum. Can you help me with next slide, please, Eric? Okay, during the World Urban Forum, I hope you have the picture in your walls. That picture is a water tank, and it was the opening of this strategy that I'm going to tell you was during the World Urban Forum with the team of the United Nations. This is a very particular and innovative strategy of the mayorship of Medellín, and some of story and some context to understand this strategy. In Spanish, it's called Unidades de Vida Articuladas. In English, is Articulated Life Units. We have in our valley, Medellín is inside a valley, so up to the hills, we have a lot of slums, we have a lot of houses, and inside those slums and houses, we have water tanks. And those water tanks, they used to be closed by a fence. Now in the picture, you can see that there is no fence anymore. We needed, and the mayorship is very worried about how can we give to the community, how can we give to the people more public space. So the mayorship took the decision to take that fence out, and now the tanks are illuminated, as you can see it in the picture, and there are water fonts around. It's a very nice strategy, and the visitors for the forum, they were impressed with this innovative strategy. Around these water tanks, now we have rooms for learning, we have rooms with internet, we have rooms with 3D technology for young people. Around these water tanks, now you can go to share an afternoon, to share a night, to share to make a picnic. Those spaces are now open to the public, and you can do activities, and you can develop different, let's say, like possibilities. We have a lot of new possibilities for the people around the articulated life units. And I'll tell you more about this strategy later. So let's go, Eric, please, to the next slide. Okay, another of the subjects we have today, and we want to connect this with sustainable cities and greener cities, is the subject of a shared value. But first, I would like to make a difference between three terms that sometimes give us a confusion. The first one is philanthropy, the second one is social responsibility, and the third is shared value. So I would like you to have very clear what means philanthropy, what means social responsibility, and what means shared value. First, I would like you to talk about philanthropy. Many organizations around the world are working in a philanthropic way, are doing philanthropy when they give grants to the community, when there are many organizations and corporate organizations around the world and they have in their budget some money or resources to give to the community, and that's not connected to a strategy, or that's not connected to their strategic map. So when we talk about philanthropy, we talk about only giving without expecting a return and without expecting a different value. In the other hand, we have social responsibility. When we talk about social responsibility, we talk about being responsible with all our stakeholders. I'll go deep inside the stakeholders, but to understand social responsibility, I would like to tell you that the stakeholders are all those parts interested in your organization. For example, clients, for example, the authorities, other allies. And to practice social responsibility is to do things well with all of those stakeholders. That's about social responsibility. And the third term, which I think is very important, and that's why we wanted to talk about it today, is the term of shared value. It appeared in an article of Harvard Business Review. The author was Michael Porter. Can you help me with the next slide, please, Eric? And we can define a shared value about creating economic value in a way that also creates social value by addressing societal needs and challenges. And we also could say about shared value, recognizing the intersection between society and corporate performance. So shared value is about creating value, not only economical value, but environmental and social value also for our stakeholders. Usually, the companies and organizations, they used to create value for the owners, sometimes for the employees, but most of the time only for the owners who were expecting a profit, and they were expecting profitable companies where they were investing. Nowadays, if we analyze this concept of shared value of Michael Porter, we understand that the value is not only nowadays for the owners of the company, and it's not only for the investors. There are many ways to create value, also for the environment and also for the communities, if we have a real plan to make it. It's a big challenge because before, the private foundations, they used to give only grants, and they were not thinking about sharing value with those interested and with those stakeholders. Nowadays, with this shared value strategy, we can rethink how we drive businesses. And it's important, for example, to mention there is now a group of companies around the world that are the big companies. And we, for example, we are in Portafolio Verde, we are a big corporation. We don't want to be the best we don't want to be the big company of the world. We want to be the best company for the world and for the earth. So if we want to be a sustainable organization, we have to rethink our business model, our organization model to create value. And we need to create value for all our stakeholders. Sometimes we don't have the resources or the capacity to work with all our stakeholders, but we have to think how, at least with the main stakeholders, how can we add value to those stakeholders, and how can we create a new economical model to go to a real sustainable development. Can you help me with the next slide, please, Eric? So if we are talking about sharing value, we need to understand very well what is a stakeholder. And I invite you to think now in 1 or 2 minutes, I would like you to think who are your stakeholders in your organization. I can give you some examples. For example, the clients are a typical stakeholder, and we have to try to share value with our clients with new proposals of service and with new strategies and innovation. Employees are a very important stakeholder, and we have to think how can be a great place to work every time. Investors, the partners of the organizations are also stakeholders. The media, and you know nowadays with the power of social media, we have to think very well our social media strategies. I have in this slide, I have other kind of stakeholders, and we have been working, for example, with United Nations, which is an important stakeholder for Portafolio Verde. The Global Compact, we support and we help this strategy of the United Nations, which is the Global Compact. And since 2009, we have been working very closely with the Global Reporting Initiative. And I want to show you these kind of stakeholders because I would like you to think which are those stakeholders that you will dream to have and that you would like to have in your strategy as a social organization or as a company. So I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes to think, and I invite you to think who are your stakeholders, and please classify them by priorities. If you make a list as an organization or also as an individual, you will find many stakeholders around your organization and inside your organization, but I would like you to think and to prioritize them in order to create a strategy and a plan, an action plan with all of them. Take 2 minutes to think about it, please.
While they're thinking about that, Alejandro, could you give some concrete examples of how a company would use shared value as a strategy to create social and economic value at the same time?
Thank you, Eric, for that question. For example, many companies around the world are very worried because of their carbon emissions, their carbon footprint. They are calculating their footprint, but not only it's about calculating the footprint, but also how can I offset my footprint as an individual and as an organization. So there are many ways to think. All the organizations around the world have a footprint, a carbon footprint. So if we think we can offset that footprint with a reforestation strategy, we can change our energy to social and aeolic wind energy. And the important is not only about calculating our footprint, but to defining how can I look different possibilities around the world, how can I find partners to to share the value. So if I have a problem in my company and I have a big footprint, I can find a forest around the world, and I can help to strengthen that forest and also the community. So if I'm doing that, I'm not only helping to reduce my carbon footprint, but I am strengthening a new ecosystem in some place around the earth, and also I am helping the communities to have new life conditions and a better life condition. That is one of the main important conclusions of the conference of Rio +20 conference about sustainable development. And I want to show you two examples about sharing value, sharing environmental and social value that we have in Portafolio Verde. If you help me with the next slide, Eric, please. Okay, I want to share with you two strategies that of how are we creating, how are we sharing value with our stakeholders. We have different kind of stakeholders, and we are doing this strategy that is the picnic for the planet. This week, we are in the week of the Earth, Earth, and next Sunday, we will have the third version of the picnic for the planet. All of you there in the webinar are invited to share a picnic next Sunday. You just have to go with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues, with the people working at your organizations, and we invite you to go outside, to go to a park. We here in Medellín, we will do it at the Botanical Garden, and this is a strategy to involve the people with social and environmental aspects. We want to share education, environmental education with the kids. We also bring young people to share different strategies and of how can we take action to have a real sustainable development in the world. And we also have seniors that are very interested in helping the planet and the earth. So this is our third picnic for the planet. It's not a very sophisticated strategy, but we have moved the social media doing this picnic and inviting many people around the world to think in this week of the earth about what can we do for the conservation of the earth and to preserve natural resources. So shared value here, we in Portafolio Verde are not only helping our clients with their projects, and we are not only doing consultancy for our partners. This is a strategy of how can we share value with different stakeholders, and we are doing this in a volunteer way. The only thing we are expecting of this kind of strategies is to share a space with our stakeholders in a different space. We don't want to go inside a theater or a room or a conference room. We want to go outside in a place like the Botanical Garden and to share some ideas with the people, and with very important, with people interested in sustainable development and with different organizations. And the second strategy I would like to share today with you, if you help me with next slide, please, Eric. The second strategy I want to show you today is Expo Sustainability. We are leading in Colombia this Expo where we invite leaders and decision makers of different companies and organizations to tell us how they are planning, how they are thinking the sustainability at their organizations. This year we had the third version, and we had the honor to invite companies like Microsoft, like Nestle, and like AkzoNobel, all of them included in the Dow Jones Sustainability World Index. There are many expos of many topics around the world. Some of them are about waste management, some of them are about water, some of them are about air pollution, but we wanted to create this expo sustainability to talk with the leaders of sustainability at the organizations. Some of them are private, some of them of the public, some of them they come from the private sector, some of them are from public organizations, but always with the idea to share with them how the companies that are doing well in environmental, social, and economical aspects, how are they planning and how is their strategy to define the sharing value strategy, and how are they sharing value with different organizations. So these kind of spaces and these kinds of conferences helps us to define how can we be involved with other organizations, and after the events we get a lot of partners and we can develop new projects, and we can find new ways to collaborate with other organizations, not only in Colombia but in other places of the world where we have companies showing their cases of sustainability. So this is a second case of how we can share value with our stakeholders. In this case, we have different stakeholders there in the picture. Can you help me please with the next slide, Eric, please?
Yeah. So that kind of ends the formal presentation part of Alejandro's presentation. Just to kind of go into a little bit more detail about some of the things that you were talking about. It seems like the focus of shared value, the World Urban Forum, and even the general trend of a lot of environmental movements around the world is trending towards a more human-focused, human-centered focus. It's even reflected in the theme of Earth Day today is for sustainable cities or greener cities. So I guess my question is just, do you see this human-centered focus of the environmental movement being something, being something embodied in the concept of shared value? Is that a good thing for environmental outcomes? And how is that used to increase positive impacts for our environment?
Oh, thank you, Eric. I think to answer that question, I think it would be very interesting to go to the term of collective consciousness. I was telling you about two strategies we are using to share value with our stakeholders, but as individuals, we go to those activities as individuals. And if we can share with individuals, we will start to grow the collective consciousness of our world and of our Earth. How can we do that? As individuals, we have the responsibility to be involved with the social media around the world. We need to share the message with our colleagues, with our friends, with our family, and which is the best way to do that? The best way is to use the social media to create a collective consciousness. And as you said before, Eric, if we are working to have greener cities and to have a real social and environmental development around the world, it will be very difficult if we don't act and if we don't do it in team, if we don't do it creating a real collective consciousness. And I think it's important for you guys and fellows there in the webinar. We have to be involved and to work with sustainable development in our own cities. We always leave urban planning and these kind of topics to the government, and it's not only a work and it's not only a task for the government. We need to grow more sustainable cities where we live and where we work. And we need to find a real intersection between the environment, the economy, and social aspects to have real cities and to have cities for people. Because as I said before, we have been designing cities for cars, and we have been thinking a lot about infrastructure, but we need to motivate others to create and to build cities for people, and we need places inside the cities where we can share these kind of ideas with other organizations.
So in talking about forming partnerships with other organizations, perhaps governments or larger companies, how do you see shared value as a strategy to get them to the table? For example, how do you get a large company, maybe headquartered in a large metropolis, to see some local community where they might have some facility as a stakeholder, as a group that they should be considering when they're planning out their activities?
Okay, I would like to mention, Eric, the case with a company like Starbucks. We had the opportunity to work with Starbucks, and when they make grants to different organizations around the world, we wanted not only to invest the grant, but to look the way that the grant could improve the social and environmental conditions of the communities around the coffee. So we went to a city with many coffee growers, and what we said to them, it was like, you have to prepare for many different labels and eco labels, social labels. So let's develop a strategy to create conditions that so you can in the future be prepared for many kinds of certifications and eco labels. So I think it's a good strategy of sharing value for a city, because we didn't spend this grant in a specific project, but we invested the grant in helping a community to get better environmental and social conditions to be prepared for future certifications, because all their stakeholders are asking them for new labels. For example, if you want to sell to Walmart, now you need a special protocol. If you are selling to Juan Valdez, you need a special protocol. So we wanted to help them to be sustainable in the future. And the best way was to share that value with the communities and with those organizations working around the coffee. And now the coffee growers, they have the possibility to receive different auditors for different protocols and to create value for the new generations and around their cities.
So in that case, the company is seeing that they need certain criteria met. So in working with the local communities, they can have their own needs met, but it also helps them to be able to widen their markets and to be able to attract different vendors as well.
Exactly, Eric. And I think in that, I would like to add something, and it's about education. What I showed you two strategies about how are we sharing value with a general public, which is the Picnic for the Planet, and with a very specific target, which is expose sustainability. But both of them, they have something in common, and is about education. Also, the articulated unit for life, the unidades de vida articuladas that I showed you before around the water tank, there is also an education strategy. And what I think is very important about education is that education is the foundation of sustainable development. So as social innovators, I would like to invite you to think, how are we training and how are we educating our different stakeholders? And I think that would be a great way to share value with people. And if we are talking about leadership, even in social innovators, has to be about motivation, and we have to motivate. And today is a great day to think about it because it's the Earth Day. We have to think in those stakeholders that you were thinking before. We have to define a strategy about how are we working and how are we helping them to be better as organizations and as individuals.
Thank you. So in talking about developing strategies, shared value is something obviously that could help to motivate the people listening here in this webinar. I think are probably all people who are on board with the concept of using different strategies to help promote sustainability. How can it be used not just within your own life and your own organization, but with other organizations and partners?
Yes, very good question, Eric. I would like you to think, if you have clients, if you have partners, and those partners are organizations and they have their own foundations or they have strategies, their own strategies for sustainability, I would like you to think, how can we connect our organization with their necessities and with their priorities? Because the priorities for Microsoft are different for the priorities of Nestlé. For example, Nestlé is very centered in developing strategies around water and about rural development. In the other hand, Microsoft is working around the sky and about technology and about different ways to save information in a sustainable way. So I invite you to think, which kind of organizations I'm ready to work with, or with which organization I could collaborate. And if we identify in their sustainability report or in the media, for example, in the case of Nestlé, if we are sure that they are looking for different organizations around the world working with water and working with this very special resource, and we have a branch or we have a project in our organization in the field of water, so there is a match, and we can define a strategy and we can make a proposal to this company to work together and to find a way to collaborate, to have a real shared value strategy. I think that's a way, Eric, to define how can we collaborate and how can we partnership with different organizations around the world with this shared value idea.
Great. So I just wanted to open it up for questions from the audience. We had one question about how do you have this become a strategy for an individual?
Okay, very important question. Thank you for that question, Eric, because sometimes we think as an organization, and it's very easy to find our stakeholders. But I remember a book of Stephen Covey. He was the director of the Leadership Center of Harvard, and Stephen Covey was always inviting us to think who are our stakeholders as a person. So, for example, if you have a boss, that's one of your stakeholders. If you have a family, so you have a stakeholder that is your family. If you are advocating in an organization, so you have a stakeholder that is an organization. So as individuals, it's also possible to think, how can we do things better with all of those stakeholders? In the case of greener cities, for example, I invite you to identify which organization is working toward a greener city, and how we don't have to think, if we have ideas, we don't have to make them reality alone. We can find ways of collaboration with different stakeholders around our cities. But as individuals, as Stephen Covey said, we can identify our stakeholders and we can define a plan to make things better with all of our stakeholders as individuals.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience? Just give a couple minutes for people to write anything in.
Can you show the next slide, please, Eric?
Sure.
While you think about new questions, I would like to interact with you after this webinar. I have the Twitter of our organization, which is at Portafolio Verde, and also I have my personal Twitter. If you want to share ideas with me, if you would like to find in a project, if I invite you also to the picnic next. Let's celebrate this Week of the Earth, and if you can join us with a picnic from you can do it from any country. I know we have now participants from Vietnam. It would be very interesting if we have a picnic next Sunday in Vietnam and in Mexico and Brazil, Peru. We want to do a big picnic for the Earth. And if you invite your friends, your family, your colleagues to the picnic, please share some ideas with them and help them. How can they take action for a better planet and for a better Earth? Thinking in the future generations.
Thank you, Alejandro. So once again, I just wanted to thank everyone for being part of this webinar, and Alejandro has gratefully put this this contact slide up for anyone who wants to contact him. Please feel free to do so using that information. And then if you have any further questions about the YouthActionNet, you can send all questions to this email address here, yan@iyfnet.org. So once again, I just wanted to thank you for participating and remind you that there's a very short survey after the close of the webinar, and if you can just fill that out for us, that would be fantastic. So if there's no more last-minute questions.
Thank you, Eric, for this opportunity, and thank you for all of you there in your countries and your cities, and let's keep in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.